The morning sun peeked over the rolling hills surrounding Oakridge Stables, casting long shadows across the training track. It was going to be another beautiful day, the kind that made everyone at the stable smile. And no one had more reason to smile than the stable manager, Tom Harris, as he watched Thunder's Pride warming up for his morning exercise. "That horse is something special," Tom said to no one in particular, shaking his head in wonder. Thunder's Pride, or Thunder as everyone called him, truly was a sight to behold. His chestnut coat gleamed like polished copper in the early light, muscles rippling beneath his skin as he pranced sideways, eager to run. Standing at 16 hands high with a white blaze down his face, Thunder had the look of a champion. And a champion he was. Over the past 2 years, Thunder had won 3 regional championships back-to-back, breaking records and leaving competitors in the dust. Horse racing experts from across the country had their eyes on him, many predicting he would soon compete at the national level. His owner, a businessman named Richard Bell, had already turned down offers worth small fortunes for the horse. "Easy boy, easy," called out Thunder's jockey, a young man named Pete, as he guided the spirited horse toward the starting position. "Save that energy for the real thing." The small crowd of stable hands and trainers gathered to watch the morning training session. This was normal. Everyone loved to see Thunder run. There was something magical about the way he moved, as if he was barely touching the ground. "He's looking good today," said Lisa, one of the grooms who had been with Thunder since he first arrived at Oakridge 3 years ago. "I swear he knows when people are watching him. Bit of a show-off, this one." The training started like any other. Thunder and Pete made their way around the track once at a steady pace, warming up properly. On the second lap, they picked up speed. Thunder's stride lengthened, his powerful legs eating up the ground. His breathing was steady, his form perfect. This was what he was born to do. Then, halfway through the third lap, it happened. There was no dramatic stumble, no loud noise that spooked him. One moment Thunder was flying around the track, the next he was pulling up sharply, his right hind leg barely touching the ground. Pete, feeling the sudden change beneath him, immediately pulled back on the reins and jumped off. "Something's wrong," he shouted, his voice carrying across the now silent training ground. Tom Harris was already running toward them, followed by 2 other trainers. The small crowd that had gathered to watch the morning training session held their breath. Everyone at Oakridge knew how much Thunder meant to the stables. He wasn't just their star, he was their heart. "Don't move him," Tom ordered as he reached horse and rider. He knelt down carefully beside Thunder, who was standing awkwardly, his right hind leg lifted slightly off the ground. The horse's ears were pinned back, his eyes showing white around the edges, clear signs of pain. Within the hour, Dr. Reynolds, the top equine vet in the county, arrived. After a thorough examination, including ultrasound images taken with portable equipment, his face told the story before his words did. "Severe tendon damage," he announced to the small group of people who mattered most in Thunder's life: Tom, Lisa, Pete, and Mr. Bell, who had rushed over from his office in town. "One of the worst cases I've seen. We can try the usual treatments, but—" His voice trailed off, but everyone understood what he wasn't saying. Horses with injuries this severe rarely returned to racing form. Many never walked normally again. Over the next few weeks, Thunder received the best care money could buy. Special medications, cold therapy, careful bandaging. Everything by the book and then some. But the spark was gone from his eyes. It was as if the magnificent animal knew his racing days were over. Mr. Bell visited less and less, his phone calls to check on Thunder's progress becoming shorter and further apart. Then came the call that the stable staff had been dreading. "It's not worth the ongoing expense," Mr. Bell told Tom over the phone, his voice businesslike and cold. "I've contacted a buyer who'll take him off our hands by the end of the week." Everyone at the stables knew what that meant. No one would pay good money for an injured racehorse, except those who dealt in horsemeat. As the stable hands prepared Thunder for transport, the once proud animal stood with his head hanging low, as if he had given up on life altogether. What no one knew was that someone was watching, someone who wasn't ready to give up on Thunder just yet. Just over the hill from Oakridge Stables stood a small farmhouse with a weathered red barn and a few acres of land. This was home to 12-year-old Lily Miller and her grandparents, May and Robert Miller. Their property bordered the expansive grounds of the stables, separated only by a wooden fence that had seen better days. Every morning after breakfast, Lily would slip out the back door with a worn backpack slung over her shoulder. Inside were her treasures, a sketchbook, colored pencils, and a dog-eared copy of Black Beauty. Her grandmother would watch from the kitchen window as the small figure in overalls made her way to the fence line, settling under the shade of an old oak tree. "She's gone to watch the horses again," May would say to her husband. Robert would nod, understanding in his eyes. Let her be. It's the only time she seems at peace. Lily hadn't spoken more than a handful of words to anyone outside her grandparents since the car accident 3 years ago. The crash that took her parents had also stolen her voice, the doctors calling it selective mutism brought on by trauma. At school, she communicated through nods, head shakes, and handwritten notes. Her teachers were understanding but worried. Her classmates had long since given up trying to make her talk. But alone by the fence, Lily was different. Hidden from view, she would whisper to the horses that grazed nearby. Sometimes, when she thought no one could hear, she would read aloud from her book, her voice soft but clear. It was during one of these morning visits, nearly 6 months ago, that Lily first spotted Thunder's Pride. The magnificent horse had captured her attention immediately. Day after day, she returned to watch him train, sketching his powerful form in her notebook, adding details with each visit, the white blaze on his face, the way he tossed his head before a run, how his ears would prick forward when his jockey spoke to him. In her quiet way, Lily had formed a connection with the horse she had never met. She had given him a nickname, Star, because of the way he shone brighter than all the others. On this particular afternoon, Lily had arrived at her usual spot to find the stables unusually busy. Staying hidden behind the large tree trunk, she watched as unfamiliar men in dark clothes spoke with Tom, the stable manager she recognized from her many observation days. Their voices carried across the field. "We'll pick him up Friday morning. Have him ready," one of the men said, handing over some papers. Tom's face looked grim. "I still think Mr. Bell should reconsider. Thunder's not just any horse." The taller man shrugged. "A lame racehorse is worth nothing but what we'll pay. At least this way, he'll serve some purpose." Lily's heart began to pound in her chest. She might be young, but she wasn't naive. She knew what happened to horses that couldn't race anymore. Her grandfather, a retired vet, had told her sad stories about the fate of many beautiful animals. She watched as the men left, and then saw Tom walk slowly to Thunder's stall. From her vantage point, she could see the magnificent horse standing with his head down, his once proud stance now defeated. Even from a distance, Lily could tell something was terribly wrong. That evening, for the first time in years, Lily burst through the kitchen door with an urgency that startled her grandparents. "They're going to kill Star," she cried out, tears streaming down her face. "Grandpa, they're going to take him away on Friday and kill him." May dropped the plate she was drying, barely noticing as it shattered on the floor. Robert stood frozen, coffee mug halfway to his lips. Neither moved, both shocked not by the news about the horse, but by the torrent of words from their granddaughter's mouth. "Lily, honey," May finally whispered, "you're talking." But Lily wasn't interested in discussing her sudden return to speech. "Grandpa, please," she begged, grabbing Robert's weathered hands. "You have to help him. He's hurt his leg, but he doesn't deserve to die. Please, Grandpa, please." Robert looked into his granddaughter's tear-filled eyes, seeing something he hadn't seen in 3 long years: passion, determination, life. He glanced at his wife, who gave a small nod. "Tell me everything you know about this horse," he said, pulling out a kitchen chair, "and then we'll figure out what we can do." As the evening shadows grew long, Lily talked more than she had in the past 3 years combined. Something had broken free inside her. The fear of the horse's fate somehow unlocking her own trapped voice, and as she spoke, a plan began to form. The next morning, Robert Miller sat at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee growing cold between his hands. His old veterinary bag, dusty from years of disuse, sat open on the table. Inside were his most treasured possessions: photographs of his days treating animals across the county, letters of thanks from grateful owners, and beneath it all, a small leather pouch. Robert opened the pouch and emptied its contents onto the table. Stacks of $20 bills, some crisp and new, others worn and faded, piled up beside his coffee. $3,200, he muttered, counting through the stack one more time. Every penny we've saved. May placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Are you sure about this, Robert? That's our emergency fund. Before he could answer, Lily appeared in the doorway, already dressed in her cleanest jeans and the blue sweater her grandmother had knitted for her last Christmas. Her hair was neatly braided, and she clutched a small drawing of Thunder's Pride in her hand. I'm ready, Grandpa, she said, her voice still soft but steady. Robert looked from his wife to his granddaughter, then back to the money on the table. I don't know if it'll be enough, he admitted. Racehorses, even injured ones, can be worth a lot more than this. But we have to try, Lily insisted. Please. The drive to Oakridge Stables took less than 10 minutes, but to Lily it felt like hours. She sat in the passenger seat of her grandfather's old pickup truck, clutching her drawing and staring straight ahead, her lips moving in silent prayer. When they pulled up to the main office, Tom Harris was outside, checking items off a clipboard. He looked up, surprised to see visitors so early. Can I help you folks? He asked, his eyes lingering curiously on Lily. Robert stepped forward, extending his hand. Robert Miller. I own the small farm next door. This is my granddaughter, Lily. Recognition flickered across Tom's face. Miller, wait, are you the vet who used to work with Dr. Johnson? Robert nodded. Retired now. Arthritis got the better of my hands. He flexed his gnarled fingers as if to demonstrate. But we're here about one of your horses, Thunder's Pride. Tom's friendly expression faltered. I'm afraid Thunder's not available for viewing. He's being moved tomorrow. We know, Robert said quietly. That's why we're here. We'd like to speak with the owner. 20 minutes later, they sat in a plush office facing Richard Bell across a massive desk. Bell was a tall man with silver hair and an expensive suit. His eyes were cool as he assessed his unexpected visitors. Mr. Harris tells me you're interested in Thunder's Pride, Bell said, tapping his fingers impatiently on his desk. I'm afraid any purchase offers should have been made weeks ago. He's already been sold. To a slaughterhouse, Lily said suddenly, her voice so clear and strong that all three adults turned to stare at her. Bell's expression hardened. Young lady, that's a business matter and none of your concern. With all due respect, Mr. Bell, Robert intervened. We'd like to make an offer. He placed the leather pouch on the desk and carefully counted out the bills. $3,200. It's everything we have. Bell laughed, not unkindly but with genuine disbelief. The meat buyers are paying $5,000, and even that's a loss for me. Do you know how much that horse cost? How much I've invested in his training? His medical care since the injury alone has been. I know how to help him, Lily interrupted, stepping forward and placing her drawing on top of the money. I've been watching him. I know he's sad now, but he doesn't want to die. Bell stared at the girl, then at the surprisingly detailed sketch of his prized racehorse. You drew this? Lily nodded. I watch him every day from our fence. He likes apples, and he doesn't like it when the jockey uses the crop. He runs faster when you just talk to him. The room fell silent. Bell picked up the drawing, studying it more closely. Then he looked at the pile of cash. A pitiful sum compared to what he'd spent on the horse, but clearly everything this family had. Why? He finally asked. Why would you spend your life savings on an injured horse you've never even met? Lily met his gaze without flinching, because everyone deserves a second chance. The silence stretched for what seemed like an eternity. Then Bell did something unexpected. He pushed the money back across the desk. $3,000, he said quietly, not a penny less. But I'll take it as a down payment. If, and this is a big if you can get that horse walking properly again within 6 months, we'll call it even. If not, you owe me the remaining $2,000. He extended his hand to Robert. Do we have a deal? Robert looked at Lily, whose face had lit up with hope for the first time in years. We have a deal, he said, shaking Bell's hand. As they signed the paperwork, none of them realized that this unlikely agreement would change all of their lives forever. Getting Thunder home was harder than they expected. The horse was weak and frightened, unwilling to walk up the ramp into Robert's old horse trailer. It took Tom and 2 stable hands nearly an hour to coax the nervous animal inside. Good luck, Tom said, handing Robert a folder of medical records. You're going to need it. The concern in his eyes suggested he thought they'd made a terrible mistake. The small barn behind the miller's farmhouse hadn't housed animals in years. Robert had been renting the land to neighboring farmers, keeping just enough space for May's vegetable garden and a small chicken coop. Now they'd spent the morning cleaning out the largest stall, laying fresh straw, and preparing a space for a horse they barely knew. Thunder's arrival home was not the joyful event Lily had imagined. The once proud racehorse limped painfully down the trailer ramp, his head hanging low, eyes dull with pain and confusion. When they led him into the stall, he simply stood in the corner, not even interested in the fresh hay or the bucket of clean water. "He's not eating," May observed worriedly that evening as they watched from the barn doorway. "That's not a good sign." Robert nodded grimly. "I called Dr. Wilson. He'll be out tomorrow to take a look." Dr. Wilson arrived early the next morning, a young vet who had taken over most of Robert's old clients. As he examined Thunder, his face grew increasingly serious. "The tendon damage is extensive," he confirmed, showing Robert the ultrasound images on his portable machine. "They tried the standard treatments at Oak Ridge, but there's been minimal improvement. Frankly, I'm surprised they didn't put him down weeks ago." "Can he get better?" Lily asked in a small voice from the corner where she'd been watching. Dr. Wilson startled slightly, apparently not having noticed her. "Honestly, no, not really. He might eventually walk without pain, but he'll never race again, never even run properly. And the road to even that much recovery would be long and expensive." He turned to Robert. "I know you were a vet yourself, so I'll be straight with you. The kindest thing might be to end his suffering." Lily's face crumpled. "No," she cried out. "We promised we'd help him." Dr. Wilson looked uncomfortable. "I understand this is difficult," he said gently. "But sometimes helping means making hard choices." After the vet left, an uncomfortable silence fell over the family. May busied herself making lunch, while Robert sat at the kitchen table, studying Thunder's medical records with a deepening frown. Lily disappeared. When she hadn't returned by dinner time, May grew worried. Where could she be? Robert glanced toward the barn. "I think I know." Sure enough, they found Lily sitting on an upturned bucket in Thunder's stall. The horse still stood in the corner, but something had changed. His head was no longer hanging quite so low, and his ears twitched occasionally toward the sound of Lily's voice. She was reading aloud from Black Beauty, her voice soft but steady. "My troubles are all over, and I am at home, and often before I am quite awake, I fancy I am still in the orchard at Birtwick, standing with my old friends under the apple trees." She looked up as her grandparents entered. "It's his favorite part," she said simply. May and Robert exchanged glances. "Honey," May said gently, "did you give the horse something to eat?" "His hay is gone." Lily nodded. "He wouldn't eat the hay, so I gave him some apple slices. He likes those." Robert knelt down, ignoring the protest of his arthritic knees. "Lily, sweetheart, I need to tell you something important. Dr. Wilson thinks—" "I know what he thinks," Lily interrupted. "But he's wrong. Thunder doesn't want to die. He just needs someone to believe in him." Her eyes filled with tears. "Please, Grandpa, just give me some time." Robert looked at the horse, then back at his granddaughter. The same determined expression that had been on her face when she first begged to save Thunder was there now. And something else too, a sense of purpose he hadn't seen since before the accident that took her parents. 2 weeks, he finally said. "If he's not showing any improvement in 2 weeks, we'll have to reconsider." Lily nodded solemnly. 2 weeks, she agreed. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Robert found May sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of tea growing cold in front of her. "What have we gotten ourselves into, Robert?" she asked quietly. He sighed, taking her hand in his. "I don't know. But that's the most our granddaughter has spoken in 3 years. Whatever happens with the horse, that alone is worth every penny we spent." Neither of them knew that in the barn, Lily had sneaked back out to Thunder's stall, a flashlight and her father's old laptop balanced precariously on her knees as she searched for information that might save her new friend. For 5 nights straight, Lily sneaked out to the barn after her grandparents went to sleep. Wrapped in her father's old flannel jacket, she would sit for hours with Thunder, one hand on her laptop, the other gently stroking the horse's nose. During the day, she would read to him, talk to him, and coax him to eat small handfuls of feed mixed with apple pieces, but at night she was on a mission. "There has to be something," she whispered to Thunder on the 5th night, her eyes burning from staring at the screen. "Something nobody's tried yet." The first week had passed with little improvement. Thunder was eating enough to stay alive, but his injured leg remained painful and swollen. He would rest it carefully, barely touching his hoof to the ground. Dr. Wilson had visited again, his expression even more concerned than before. "The inflammation isn't responding to the medications," he had told Robert. "I don't want to rush your decision, but—" Lily had heard enough. That night, she changed her search terms. Instead of looking for horse tendon injury treatment, she tried alternative therapies for horses and then experimental treatments for injured racehorses. And that's when she found it. The article was from a small veterinary journal in Sweden. The headline read, "Water therapy shows promise for severe equine tendon injuries." Lily clicked on it, her heart pounding. The article described how a team of veterinarians had developed a rehabilitation technique using controlled water environments to help horses recover from injuries similar to Thunder's. The water supported the horse's weight, allowing gentle movement without stress on the damaged tendon. Over time, this helped rebuild strength and reduce inflammation. Lily read the article 3 times, her excitement growing. There were before and after pictures of horses who had recovered. Real proof it could work. "This is it, Star," she whispered, using her special nickname for Thunder. "This is how we're going to help you." The next morning, Lily burst into the kitchen where her grandparents were having coffee. "Grandpa, I found something." She thrust the laptop onto the table, nearly knocking over Robert's coffee mug. "Hydrotherapy for horses. Look." Robert adjusted his reading glasses and peered at the screen, his expression changing from skepticism to interest as he scrolled through the article. "Water therapy, huh?" he said slowly. "Makes sense in theory. Buoyancy would take pressure off the leg while allowing movement to strengthen the surrounding muscles. They're doing it in Sweden and some places in Germany," Lily said eagerly. "And look, this horse had the exact same injury as Thunder." May leaned over her husband's shoulder. "But where would we find a place that does this treatment? The nearest large animal hospital is 3 hours away, and I doubt they have this kind of specialized equipment." Lily's face fell, but only for a moment. "We could build one," she said suddenly. "We have that old irrigation ditch by the east field. We could fix it up, make it work somehow." Robert ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Lily, honey, it's not that simple. These facilities are expensive, specialized." "But we have to try." Lily insisted, her voice rising. "You were a vet, Grandpa. You know how to help animals, and I can help you. Please, we have to at least try." We promised him a chance. Robert looked at his wife, who gave a small nod. Then he looked back at the determination in his granddaughter's eyes. "All right," he sighed. "I'll take a look at that old ditch after breakfast. No promises, though." By mid-afternoon, Robert was knee-deep in the overgrown irrigation ditch that ran along the eastern edge of their property. Years ago, it had channeled water to the fields when he still farmed the land. Now it was mostly dry, filled with weeds and debris. "It'll need to be completely cleared out," he called to Lily, who stood at the edge, notepad in hand. "And we'll need to line it with something smooth, maybe rubber matting. The sides aren't steep enough either. A horse could easily step out." "Can we fix it?" Lily asked, the worry clear in her voice. Robert looked at the ditch, then at the barn where Thunder stood in his stall. Then he looked at his granddaughter, whose face was filled with hope. "Yeah," he said finally. "I think we can fix it. It won't be fancy like those European facilities, but it might just do the trick." He climbed out of the ditch, brushing dirt from his pants. "We're going to need some help, though." Lily threw her arms around her grandfather. "Thank you, Grandpa," she whispered. "Thank you for believing in us." As they walked back to the house to make a list of needed supplies, neither noticed Tom Harris from Oak Ridge Stables, who had pulled up in his truck to check on Thunder. "What in the world are those two up to?" he muttered to himself, watching them with curious eyes. Word spread quickly through the small farming community about the Millers project. Some called it foolish, others called it a waste of money, but a few neighbors showed up anyway, tools in hand, ready to help. My daddy always said you helped Robert Miller when he needed it, said Frank Wilson, the hardware store owner, as he unloaded rolls of thick rubber lining from his truck. Said he never charged to help birth my first colt, even though it took all night. Old Joe Baker, who still farmed the land next door despite being well into his 70s, arrived with his teenage grandson and a small backhoe. Thought this might speed things up, he said gruffly, not meeting Robert's eyes. Boy needs to learn how to operate it anyway. Even Tom Harris from Oak Ridge Stables stopped by, bringing leftover medical supplies and a special feed supplement. Don't get your hopes up, he warned Robert. But I've seen stranger things happen in my years with horses. For 2 weeks, they worked from sunrise to sunset. The irrigation ditch was cleared, deepened, and carefully lined with rubber matting. Robert designed a gentle slope at one end so Thunder could walk in and out safely. Lily's research had shown that the water should reach just below the horse's chest, so they installed a simple pump system to control the water level. It's not exactly what they have in Europe, Robert admitted as they surveyed their work, but it might just do the job. The real challenge came when it was time for Thunder's first session. The horse balked at the water's edge, eyes rolling in fear, refusing to move forward despite Lily's gentle coaxing. He's scared, she told her grandfather, stroking Thunder's neck. He doesn't understand we're trying to help him. For 3 days, they tried everything. May brought apples and carrots to tempt him. Robert tried leading him with a rope. Nothing worked. Thunder would get to the edge of the water and freeze, trembling with fear. On the 4th morning, Lily arrived at the barn to find her grandmother already there, brushing Thunder's coat in long, gentle strokes. I've been thinking, May said without looking up. When you were little and afraid of the bathtub after that bad fall you took, what did your mother do? Lily thought back. The memory was hazy but warm. She got in with me. She held my hand and got in first to show me it was safe. May nodded. Exactly. Later that day, Lily stood at the edge of their makeshift hydrotherapy track, her jeans rolled up to her knees, feet bare. It's okay, Star, she said softly, stepping into the cool water. See, it feels good. It's not scary at all. Thunder watched her, ears pricked forward with interest. Lily walked a few steps deeper, the water now reaching her knees. Come on, boy, you can do it. The horse hesitated, pawed at the ground, then took one tentative step into the water. Then another, and another, until he was standing beside Lily in the shallow end, the water lapping gently around his legs. Good boy. Lily beamed, tears of joy streaming down her face. You're so brave. From that day forward, Thunder's therapy began in earnest. Twice daily, Lily would lead him into the water for 15-minute sessions, gradually increasing to half an hour as his confidence grew. She would walk alongside him, sometimes reading aloud from Black Beauty, sometimes simply talking about her day at school. Progress was painfully slow. Some days, Thunder seemed better, putting more weight on his injured leg. Other days, he would limp as badly as ever, leaving Lily fighting back tears of frustration. Money was tight. The special feed supplements Dr. Wilson recommended were expensive. The water pump broke twice and had to be replaced. Robert took odd jobs helping neighboring farmers with their livestock to make ends meet. We can't keep this up forever, May said one night, looking at their dwindling savings account. The mortgage is due next month, and we're already behind on the electric bill. Robert nodded grimly. I know, but I can't bring myself to tell her yet. I've never seen her so, alive. Outside, the summer was fading into fall. The deadline Mr. Bell had given them was approaching fast. In just 2 more months, they would either need to show that Thunder was recovering or come up with the remaining $2,000 they owed. What they didn't know was that Mr. Bell had been watching their progress from afar, receiving regular updates from Tom Harris about the unlikely team of a broken horse and a determined little girl who refused to give up on each other. The day of reckoning arrived with the first dusting of November snow. 6 months had passed since the Millers had brought Thunder home, exactly as their agreement with Mr. Bell had specified. Today was the day he would come to evaluate Thunder's progress and decide whether they would need to pay the remaining $2,000. How does he look? May asked nervously as Robert finished brushing Thunder's coat until it gleamed in the morning light. Robert stepped back, studying the horse with a critical eye. Better. Definitely better. He's put on weight, his coat is healthier, and he's more alert. He paused. But that leg. They both knew that while Thunder had improved dramatically, he still favored his injured leg. The limp was less pronounced than before, but unmistakably there. "Mr. Bell will be here at noon," Robert said, checking his watch. "Where's Lily?" "Still in the house. She's been quiet all morning." When Lily finally appeared at the barn door, her face was set with determination. She carried a small box in her hands. "I've been keeping a record," she said, opening the box to reveal a stack of notebooks. "Every day, every treatment, every tiny bit of progress. And I took videos too, on Grandma's phone. I have proof he's getting better." Robert put his arm around her shoulders. "We know he's better, sweetheart." But Mr. Bell wanted him walking normally by now, and he just needs more time, Lily insisted. The article said some horses take up to a year to fully recover. A car crunched on the gravel driveway outside, and they all tensed. But it wasn't Mr. Bell's sleek sedan that pulled up, it was Tom Harris's truck. Behind it came another vehicle and another. Soon 5 cars were parked outside the barn. "What's going on?" May asked as Tom stepped out, followed by Dr. Wilson and 3 people they didn't recognize. "Hope you don't mind the audience," Tom said with a smile. "Word's gotten around about what you've been doing here." Dr. Wilson stepped forward. "These are colleagues of mine from the State Veterinary College. They were very interested when I told them about your hydrotherapy setup." A tall woman with gray hair and a kind face approached Robert. "Dr. Miller? I'm Dr. Paula Henderson, head of equine medicine at the university. When Dr. Wilson described your improvised rehabilitation program, I had to see it for myself." Before Robert could respond, another car pulled up. This time, it was Richard Bell. The atmosphere grew tense as Bell approached, his expression unreadable. He nodded to the assembled group, then turned to Robert. "I believe today is our deadline, Mr. Miller." "Yes, sir," Robert replied. "We've worked with Thunder every day, and while he's much improved, I have to be honest with you, he's not completely sound yet." Bell's eyes moved to Lily, who stood protectively by Thunder's side. "And what do you think, young lady? Has your project been a success?" Lily met his gaze steadily. "He's not fixed yet, but he's so much better than he was, and he's happy now. Look at his eyes. They're bright again. He wants to live." Bell studied the horse thoughtfully. "I'd like to see him move." Lily nodded and led Thunder out of his stall into the small paddock behind the barn. Everyone followed, forming a half circle as Lily removed the protective wraps from Thunder's leg. "It's okay, Star," she whispered. "Show them how strong you've become." She stepped back, and for a moment, Thunder just stood there. Then, as if understanding what was at stake, he began to walk. His gait was careful but steady. The limp was still visible, but far less pronounced than 6 months ago. After circling the paddock once, he even broke into a short trot before returning to Lily's side. The silence was broken by Dr. Henderson. "Remarkable," she said. "Given the severity of the original injury, this is incredible progress." She turned to Robert. "Your hydrotherapy approach, combined with the nutritional program you've implemented. We've been researching similar methods at the university, but you've created a working model with minimal resources." Bell looked from the horse to Lily, then to Dr. Henderson. "So, in your professional opinion, this treatment is valid?" "More than valid," Dr. Henderson replied. "It's groundbreaking for rural veterinary care. With proper documentation, this could help hundreds of horses that might otherwise be euthanized." Bell was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. "I had 2 papers drawn up," he said. "This one is a bill for the remaining $2,000. Lily's face fell, but she stood straighter, ready to face the consequence. "And this one," Bell continued, pulling out a second paper, "is the full ownership transfer of Thunder's pride to the Miller family, with no further payment required." He handed the second document to Robert. "I think we all know which one is appropriate here." Tears sprang to Lily's eyes as she realized what was happening. "Really? He's really ours?" Bell nodded. "On one condition. You continue working with Dr. Henderson and document your methods. Other horses and other families should benefit from what you've discovered here." As if understanding the momentous occasion, Thunder gently nudged Lily's shoulder with his nose. She threw her arms around his neck, burying her face in his mane to hide her tears of joy. The miracle no one expected had happened, not just for Thunder, but for all of them.